I have both a very honorable job next, and my job just got a lot shorter. Because greatness typically doesn't come with a long introduction. So we changed the protocol. My induction will be relatively short. But it's my profound honor today to invite now our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, on stage. He has been in the legislature for 10 years, and he really is an innovator and a trailblazer. And he's the one who, in the last legislative session, put this incredible program of Dementia Prevention Research Institute of Texas on the map, got it through. And it really, I think, transformed the landscape of science and healthcare in this great state. But also, as we see here, coming from all over the world, our audience really transformed the world. And so thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for taking time today to speak to us, and welcome on stage.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here. I feel like I'm a pair of brown shoes in a room full of tuxedos because I'm not a scientist and I'm not a researcher and I'm not a doctor, and I haven't studied everything that you've studied through your career or new to this issue. I'm just a deal maker. And when there's a deal to be made on something that's really important, that's my role. George Bernard Shaw wrote a play in 1921 called Methuselah. No one remembers the play, but the quote people remember. John F. Kennedy used a similar quote to what George Bernard Shaw said. He said, "Some people see things and say, why? And I dream of things that are not and say, why not?" So when I looked at this issue and through my political life, which is now in the 20 years, that's how I kind of see the world. There's so many people just in life that say, well, I wonder how that happened or why that happened. And they look over here and say, well, why can't we do this? Well, there's no reason we can't do this. Those of you who are researchers and doctors and scientists in this room, this is what you do. You're looking for discoveries. You're looking for breakthroughs. You're looking for things that other people have said, why? And you said, well, why not? So that's really the story of the dementia bill. We have had a number of House members and senators in the past talk about doing something in the area of brain research, but it was very broad. And through my experiences traveling across Texas the last 20 years, like all of you in this room, I've met a lot of people who have been impacted by dementia, primarily Alzheimer's, which, as you all know, is 60 to 70% of all the cases. How many of you in this room know someone in your family or have a friend who has Alzheimer's? Yes. So you know a lot about it. You know that when someone has Alzheimer's, it's the one disease that once it's in its full form, the person usually doesn't know they even have it. They may actually spend the last years of their life not knowing their children, not knowing their friends, not knowing where they are. But for the most part, in the last years of Alzheimer's can be very difficult. Some of you may be aware of that. People go through it early on and they seem to function. They just are forgetful. And then that sometimes can turn into anger. That can turn into all types of difficult behavior to manage for the families. But eventually, most get over that area and they're living their life. But the families are the ones who live with the disease for a long time. And they're the caregivers. And there's not much help out there for them. Not much. So when I traveled around the state, people would tell me, I'd see it, I'd read about it. I don't have anyone directly in my family who has Alzheimer's. I have some friends whose family has it. But when I came into this session, I said, look, we have an opportunity in Texas to do big things. And why? Because Texas is the greatest place on the earth. You know, we are a state. Yes, you can applaud that. We are a state that can do big things because God has given us much. And for those, as the Bible says, who are given much, much is expected. Look at this medical center that you are in today. Think about those founders in the very beginning who saw a relatively small plot of land and said, as George Bernard Shaw said, why not? And look what we have. I'm always amazed how many buildings they can continue to build on a little footprint that many of you work in. But look at what Texas has done just in the Texas Medical Center because of the vision of a few people. I'm convinced that on the seventh day before God rested, he said, I've got this oil and gas. What do I do with it? And he said, I can trust the people in Texas with it because that is and has been a big part of our economic boom over the last 100 years. But now we're a diversified state and people come here from all over. 1,600 people a day still today are moving to Texas. In 2000, we had about 18 million Texans. Today, we have 30 million Texans. That's 12 million people in just a short time. And our state demographers say that by 2045, we will have about 45 million people. So in less than a generation from 2000 to 2045, we're talking about going from 18 to 45 million people. And with that come a number of health issues. And this is a growing one. Texas is the third largest state for Alzheimer's in the country. We are the second largest state for deaths from Alzheimer's. And now we are the biggest funder for Alzheimer's research. I spoke last week to the Alzheimer's Association in Washington, D.C. They had 1,000 delegates there. A lot of young people, which surprised me a little bit. A lot of middle-aged people who I thought were caregivers. And when I asked the question, how many of you? I asked them the same question, and about 80% of the hands were raised. So whatever your reason for being here today, whatever your reason for being interested in finding prevention, doing the research, and hopefully one day finding a cure, whatever the reason is, the fact that you're here is really important. Because you're not doing it just for the person you know, you're doing it for the families in Texas that deal with this every day. We have 459,000 people with Alzheimer's in Texas based on the medical research of who goes to doctors and tracking that data. But we know that there's many more people than that are just now forgetful, just now showing the signs that very often families or friends ignore because they don't want to face up to it. So if we know there are 459,000 cases, we know there's probably another 459,000 on top of that. And then multiply that by the families. 4 to a family, now we're dealing in the millions of people. So Alzheimer's impacts millions of Texans in different ways. So when I came into session last time, I had talked to some people in the past about their bigger vision. And I said, look, let's just focus on dementia. Let's just tackle that problem the best we can. And where did I really get the idea? From, again, being aware of it, reading about it, understanding its impact on the community and the impact on our economy. For people who may have to quit a job to stay home or work a second job to get someone to be a caregiver, because you cannot leave someone who's in full stage Alzheimer's by themselves. They need 24/7 care. So 11 years ago, I take that back, 15 years ago, 2011 was the 11 in my mind. In 2011, we passed a bill called CPRIT, Cancer Prevention and Research. And at the time, that was a hard bill to pass, mainly because some people said, well, this is really not what we should do with our tax dollars. This is really up to the hospitals, the researchers, the doctors, et cetera, to the drug companies. But at the time, Senator Jane Nelson, who's now retired, she brought the bill to the floor and she put $300 million a year in the bill for 10 years. So it was a $3 billion expenditure, which was, it was big what we did this year, even bigger then. And I voted for that bill, supported the bill, and the program kind of stumbled the first few years, quite frankly. It wasn't set up quite right, and some people were on the board who weren't the right people at the right time. But after about 2 years, it started to get traction. And we actually renewed it under my term 2 years ago when it was about to expire. So secret continues. So I just thought, why break something that's working well? Why try to come up with a new model when we have a model for cancer that works? And what is that model? Number one, you have to fund it for more than 1 year. The only people that can get grants are people who live in Texas and work in Texas. So to attract the best and the brightest from around the world, you can't say, hey, we have 300 million for next year or 100 million, whatever the number is, because they don't know if the next legislature will continue to fund it. So why would they move and come here? But when you say, we're committed for a decade, that attracts the best and the brightest in the world to come here. And it attracts those who already live here to maybe focus a little bit more on this issue than they did before, because they know there is consistent funding. Now, when we do something like that, we have to have approval of the people. So for those of you, and I know we have some out-of-state people and out-of-country folks here, but all of you who live in Texas, you voted last November, I hope, I'm sure you did, for the DPRIT bill. We had 17 bills, right, Dr. Goop? 17 constitutional amendments. And these are things that we do that the legislature can't do on our own. We can only propose it and give it to the people. I won't go into the reasons why on that. It's just the way we fund certain projects. 68% of Texans voted for the $3 billion. 68%. That's a really big number for something that a lot of people didn't really know what it was all about, but they knew it was touching their communities, it was touching their families, touching their friends, and they thought it was a good idea. So, and some of you may know, there was a question, I think, last night when you had your dinner, or whatever the meetings were yesterday, about this lawsuit. We're going to win this lawsuit. It's a frivolous lawsuit. There was a crazy law, we changed it this session, that any person on a constitutional amendment could sue to stop it from becoming law. And people have done that. So we passed a law this session that says you cannot sue to overturn the will of the people. I mean, you can't get more democracy than having a constitutional amendment and millions of people are voting and 68% of Texans say yes, and then two people come along and say, well, no. And you know what their lawsuit's about? They sued on they didn't think the voting machines were accurate. Just stupid nonsense. And so they already lost the first case in Austin, and it's now on appeal at the Fifth Circuit. And so, yeah, it's delayed the program a little bit, but we're going to win in the Fifth Circuit because it's a frivolous lawsuit. And no one will be able to do that again on a constitutional amendment. So when we look at DPRIT, just how much is $300 million? When I spoke last week at the Alzheimer's Association, the most the association has ever spent was last year, nationally, $112 million. That's the most in the whole country. And we're $300 million in Texas for the next 10 years. So we passed the bill. I will tell you it wasn't easy. There's a lot of competition for money at the state. But one of the rare opportunities we had is we've had a surplus the last couple of years. And normally when you have a surplus, like if you get a bonus, like let's say you get a bonus from whoever you work with, or if you own your own company and you make a little bit more money 1 month. Well, you can go out and buy something that you have to keep paying on, or you can do a one-time thing because you don't know if you're always going to get that bonus. So in this case, what made it hard is most of the money we spent on constitutional amendments were one-time expenditures. There was one other bill, property tax relief, that's ongoing, and this bill that's an ongoing expense. And so it's hard to get votes for that because people say, well, wait a minute, do we want to do this for 10 years? And so we were able to rally the troops, and it was supported on a bipartisan basis, overwhelmingly at the end, but there was also opposition on a bipartisan basis. Oh, there's a better way to spend the money over here, or over here we shouldn't spend it at all. So it happened, and former Speaker Tom Craddick was my sponsor in the House, and he got it through the House. And so I'm just here when the wheel went round. I'm just the guy who's your lieutenant governor, who's in a very strong position. We write the budget. Our budget last session for 2 years was $370 billion. We are a nation state. And I said, this is a priority, one of my top priorities. And we got it passed. So we don't get plaques for that. We don't get applause for it. No. I don't want applause. We really shouldn't be doing things to get applause or plaques or awards. We should be doing things that are good for the people of Texas and all people in a non-political way. And this is one of those issues. So I've done my job. It's now in your hands. How are you going to take the money that you have available and put it to use so that we can find preventive care, so that we can do the research that maybe one day leads to a cure, because it's just such a terrible, terrible disease impacting so many people. Michael Reagan, the adopted son of Ronald Reagan, who just passed away recently. Michael was in his 70s, but he and I were friends. And Michael told me one time, I said, how's the president? And this is probably 10 or 15 years ago when both Reagans were still alive, or longer. And he said, well, my dad struggles with Alzheimer's. And he said, I go over to the house every Sunday. He said, and my dad doesn't remember me anymore. He doesn't remember Nancy. All the world leaders who come to pay him their respects, he doesn't know them. He said, but I always leave with a hug. He said, one day I forgot to give him a hug. And I walked down the driveway and I got in my car. My dad was standing like that. So thank you for being here. It's an honor to be your lieutenant governor. It's an honor to be part of this. It was just the right thing to do at the right time. And if there's going to be a cure one day, if we're going to have breakthrough prevention through research, I know it's going to be in Texas. Thank you all very much, and God bless. Thank you.